The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Fourth Book. Quest for Uncle Kurt. Chapter 36. The Communists and the Nationalists of the Kuomintang, explained as the Kalikas of Xining, even if they fought united against the Japanese, sustained harsh struggles within them, in the inner regions of China. Japan controlled the entire oriental coast, at the south of Canton, and it occupied so important cities as Shanghai, Nanking, Hankou, Peking, etc. But, never has been easy to seize from China. Countless cities were dominated by the troops of Chiang Kai-shek, while the Communists were notably strong in the campaign, where they countered with the unconditional sympathy of the Chinese peasantry. This was not the result of 20 years of proselytism in that field, contradicting the postulates of the Marxism-Leninism, that affirmed the revolutionary primacy of the proletariat, or urban work class. Such tactical political success was the work of Mao Zedong, and thus, a small movement of guerrillas, which started in the austral provinces of Jiangxi and Fujian, and was extended to the centric Zhuang, after the Long March, now, was an irregular and powerful military force that has under its control 3 other provinces, around the Yan'an, Shanxi, Ningxia, and Canton, the province in which we were. That meant that, Communists prevailed in the field, and watched the paths of such region. Otherwise, the forces of Chiang Kai-shek, strong in the cities, also patrolled the paths, harassing sometimes with the Communist. This situation meant securists for whom tried to travel to the east without being enrolled in any of the sides in conflict. The Sheveguru of Xining proposed a Samana to arrive to Shanghai. As you don't consider the Japanese as your enemies, I'm going to suggest you the manner to catch them without being killed by the Communists or the Nationalists. Some months ago that would have been very simple, taking the northeastern path, and taking advantage from the navigable stretches of the Yellow River. But now, a terrible disgrace has occurred that has turned that region impassable. The Tongchi, comrade and Chinese, Chiang Kai-shek, that Kuan Yin, be mercy of his passionate heart, he has just exploded the levees of the river Hongho, to stop the advance of the Japanese, but, such action has costed a terrible sacrifice of innocent Chinese lives. In fact, if, in 1938, Chiang inundated the valley of the Yellow River, and condemned the throng of 880,000 people to die drowned. Yes, almost 1 million of dead by just one order. And I have not known that anyone promoted him a judgment for crimes against the humanity, in 1945. If that has not occurred, it will have to be admitted that he was acquitted beforehand, and that such reprieve was conceded to him in acknowledgment for his refined quality of sepoy. Just as the fact stands, continued the Sheveguru, I advise you to travel to Lenchen, Fu city situated at 200 kilometers to the east. Thence, it is possible to go to Shanghai, in different modes. Then they'll tell you how. I remind you that, in times of peace, it was feasible to travel the 200 kilometers that mediate to Shanghai, employing the railroad. Now, that can't be done, because the stretch that guided us to Lenchen is interrupted by the blasting of that bridge over the Yellow River. And from Lenchen only works a branch line that not reached beyond the Chengshu, in the province Onan. Finally, you'll have to save by horse the 200 kilometers, by a path infested with bushwhackers or nationalists, and, possibly, you'll have to kill members of both sides. But don't be worried. To kill is a common task in these days. You're 11. I'll strengthen you with 25 men armed with fusils, part of the troop that protects our neighborhood. Let's talk now about what you will do in Zhenfu. Have you heard the name the Green Band? It's about the Bandits Guild? Asked von Grossen, who, evidently knew something about the matter. The Sheveguru smiled with a compassive gesture. Don't be harsh with us. The Green Band is a secret society. And the secret societies are in China, what the fragrances are for the flowers. The Green Band is a society of initiates, who shares our same tantra, and coincides in identical Tao. Many of its members have been, or are Kalika monks. only that they, for their particular idiosyncrasy, have chosen a path that penetrates much more, in the world of the asleep men. But they, it is clear, could not accept or comply the laws of this world without and also torpid. And they don't do it. They work their way, according to their own code of honor, and for this reason they are called bandits, by the asleep men. But don't underestimate them, because it is required too much courage to be the lord of oneself in middle of the pleasures and the temptations. Only who has proven and dominated the desire of the 5 forbidden things, disposes of the sufficient will to act in the green band. That path is not for anyone, I repeat. I, for example, prefer the tranquility of our monasteries, the serenity of the gyms of martial arts, before the permanently dangerous path of the green band. However, all need each other if we have to march fighting towards the same target. It is thus that the green band helps the caller circle with what represents its force, the dominion of the material values. And the caller circle helps the green band with what they know how to do best, share, that is to say, to kill. Naturally, for us, as for Krishna, the son of Indra, to kill doesn't mean anything if the spirit of the assassin is beyond Maya, the illusion of life. If when Narasimha mows down the miserable life, the spirit dances with Shiva the dance of the destruction. I know that I mustn't explain these things to you, who are illuminated by Shiva, and that have realized the marvelous prowess to decimate the vampire Duskas. I asked you, for the green band, not to know your opinion, but to inform you that there will be who will guide you to Shanghai. In Lenchen we will put you in contact with the green band, and thenceforth, you will remain in their hands, which are of absolute trust. If you want to, they could take you out of China by Kong, but, if you insist to treat with the Japanese, you can go to Shanghai likewise. Before leaving, the Shiva Guru of Xining made us a notable reflection. You the Germans are all trusting in the Japanese. They, sooner or later, will betray you. We know them since millenniums ago, and for this reason, we can talk with fundament. Really, they are miserable Buddhists, even though they flaunt of their samurai tradition. Once, they were brave warriors, it is true, but of that, only remains the memory, and of memories lie the crippled and old men. They have been worked by the Buddhist priests of the wide fraternity, they have been moralized, it means softened, debilitated, tamed, pacified. Today, under their apparent austerity, throbs the dragon of the envy for the luxury in the Occidental culture. Under the customer of the humility, gasps the bourgeois eager of all pleasures. Under the mask of the warrior, consecrated to the penuries of the struggle, is the pusillanimous countenance of who loves the amenities of the peace. Under the declaimed honor, is hidden the treason. Remember my words, Shivachild, and repeat them to your Führer if you can. Your natural ally is not Japan, if not China. The Tao passes by here. Oh, Nifetaro, how much reason hit such Kalika monk in 1938. Just as the Führer explained me such night of the graduation, in the Chancellery, and just as was of public knowledge, he was the first who stripped the inner emmer of the Synarchy, and exposed its Judaic pith. In the center was the Zionism, esoterically sustained by the wise men of Zion of the great Snaphatrine. To dominate the world, the Synarchy, disposed of 2 tactical wings, a right one or Judeo-liberal, and a left one or Judeo-Marxist. The right wing was supported esoterically by the Masonry, and hundreds of related sects. The Marxism counted directly with the control of the members of the chosen people, therefore, their esoteric fundament would be merely rabbinic. According to the Führer, the most politically enlightened man of the history, in this manner, worked organically the great Jewish conspiracy or universal synarchy. But, one thing was to affirm it, and other to demonstrate it. How achieve that the enemy abandon every caution and leave uncovered his tenebrous alliance? How provoke him to make that reveal himself? The Führer found a solution. if there's something that the wise men of Zion will never permit, nor the Synagogue, nor the white fraternity, nor the own Creator, Jehovah Satan, will be that the communism disappear, that was more or less the great reasoning. In fact, the communism, the purest political expression of the Jewish mentality, could not be lost. Such possibility, for the Synagogue, was naturally inconceivable. And from such political perspective, the communism, ergo, was the Soviet Union. In synthesis, a tactical strike against the Soviet communism would obey to all the participant states of the Synagogue to run in succor of their ally. Attack the Soviet Union was, thereby, a strategic objective of first order against the Universal Synagogue. The Führer knew it, and he acted consciously, foreseeing that the total war of the Third Reich against the Synagogue would be a war of supreme principles. The eternal spirit, against the potencies of the matter. During the war he anticipated what would come, with his habitual accuracy. If we win the war, the Jewish world power will disappear, forever. If we lose, their triumph will not be durable, because their organization will remain definitely exposed. And what did the Japanese comrades to favor the strategy at the Führer? Let's remember. Germany invades Soviet Union on June 22 of 1941. Anyone would think that, with an ally as Japan, occupying China since 1937, the Soviet Union would be between two fires. Because, who though thus, would be very wrong, because on April 13, 1941, casually, 2 months before the Operation Barbarossa, Japan signed the Pact of Neutrality Japanese-Russian, that implied the demilitarization of Manchuria and Mongolia. It is clear, and if that is Japan would have really shared our Weltanschauung, would have attacked the Soviet Union simultaneously with the Germans. With the German armies by the west and the Japanese hordes by the east, the Soviet communism would have been suffocated in a deadly National Socialist pincer. Logically, after 1945, I have reflected too much about the words of the Shiva Guru of Shining, and it resulted difficult to don't find the reason of them for me, every time that the facts confirmed them. Of course, before the dishonest attitude of Japan, more would have been valuable for us to have the Chinese as ally. They wanted, on those years, to destroy the Soviet communism, almost as much as take the Japanese off from them. Was wrong the Führer trusting in Japan, mistake that would have costed him the campaign of Russia and the result of the World War? I think that there was not such a mistake, and that the strategy at the Führer was so brilliant that it was going to achieve the incredible effect to discover the Jewish mentality, wherever he could be, even within the own allies of Germany. In a war of supreme principles, as the one that the Führer proposed, it not interested to win or lose in the earth, in the material level, but impose a spiritual Weltanschauung, which value was completely out from every material level. If the Weltanschauung, the Hyperborean conception of the world, our flag, were understood by the man of honor, the war would be won, even though a material stumble be suffered, even when the luck of the weapons be in our favor. In this war of supreme principles, would not interest a life without honor, would be the historic moment in which each country would demonstrate their real being and what they would want to be. An extraordinary man, perhaps a god, someone to whom the Kalyaka monks, denominated the Lord of the Absolute Will, had created the circumstances that would obey each population to manifest their essence, that would put the Synagogue at sight, that would mature the Judaic pus, and make it sprout there where it would be incubating its character cultivation. Being in this manner, was wrong the Führer, or he was wonderfully right at achieving that Japan be unmasked before the world and the history showing its occult face, that today causes the admiration of the Synagogue. In history there are no surprises. The historical facts register causes that sometimes are dated centuries or millenniums back. The actual Japan is an enormous kibbutz. The Jewish mentality has been imposed on all levels, similarly as how occurs in England, and predominates a widespread consensus to make that the country remain aligned in the Synagogue, member of the Trilateral Commission, to the UN, to the NATO, etc. The entire world there speaks of yens, of peace, of consumption, of tourism, of brotherhood, liberty, fraternity, etc. This change, apparently surprising, due to the warrior vocation of the Japanese before the Second World War. Is this really a change due to the punishment of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or the exhibition of the real nature of the Japanese, who, perhaps by some type of collective trauma, have desired for centuries to be what they were not? This is, warriors, samurais, and have ended simulating, representing, the role of warriors. Because, all the historic phenomenons, like this supposed change of the Japanese, have ancient causes that justify them. No one becomes a Jew from one day to another, not even if he is circumcised. To be a good son of Israel, many virtues are necessary, as, for example, the usury, and the love for the lucre, that requires a long time to be developed. But, in so little time, the Japanese have demonstrated to be as good Jews as the Israelites and English. Does it mean that in Japan, the Judaic mentality is hidden, and that the heat of Hiroshima and Nagasaki just produced its metamorphosis, the birth of the synarchic chrysalis that today is already one more beautiful butterfly in swarm of the white fraternity? Dear Nif, you're a young idealist and know well the history. Listen to this principle, verified by an old man, who has lived too much, and that synthesizes what I told you concerning to the attitude of the Japanese. No population, never, loses its honor suddenly. There's none example in history that proves the contrary. The populations, as all what lives, follows the orders of the nature, and amongst them, as within all the inhabitants of the jungle, there are lions. Populations, and land populations, condors, populations, and rat populations. And, as amongst the animals, no lion becomes a lamb at a stroke, no condor turns into a rat all of a sudden. If such change is really possible, would require a large, millenary, evolution. Of course, that, as in the fables, the lambs con disguise of lions, the rats dress themselves of condors. Here's what I think. The strategy at the Fuhrer has marked a historical hour, analogous to the hour agreed in the masquerade dances where all the people must take their masks off, in which lambs and rats can be observed, and an infinite of other vermins, under the gorgeous costumes of lion, condor, and other predators. I think, Nif, that the Japanese were already before the World War what they are today. They didn't change an apex. That the Shirvaguru was right in his fears. But that he didn't comprehend completely the strategy at the Fuhrer, that, effectively, they betrayed us, because their hearts were with the wide fraternity, although their lips belied the strategic acts opposed to our Weltanschauung. And that it was predictable, especially for the Chinese, that since millenniums ago they knew with what kind of oxen they plow. But the treason not consisted just in the infamous pact, scrupulously respected, that left the hands of the Soviets free to take care only of Germany. Let's remember that on December 7th of 1941, when the Germans were facing the terrible Russian winter, without truce to the Bolsheviks, the Japanese comrades attacked the United States in Pearl Harbor, conceding thus the opportunity to that colossal and stupid synarchic potency to intervene directly in the world's struggle. According to the classical model of the Judaic justice, the sin of a people against Jehovah is redeemable through a ritual sacrifice of a part of its members, and the sustenance of the rest of the law. Even if the Japanese not participated directly from the benefits of the Judaic culture, their fondness for the Buddhism, and to every form of religion founded in the Kalachakra of Changshambhala, demonstrated that their withdrawal from the law was not so big. The greatest sin consisted, without doubts, in their recent alliance with the Nazism and fascism. But this little sin only required a purgatory of fire before the eternal condemn that the rabbis pretended to apply to the German National Socialism. How purge an entire people of a sin that offends their Creator? Through the lie, replied the rabbis. cleaning the sin of an entire race through the human lie, obtained in the sacrifice one, and reincorporating after the purgatory of the entire race, to the paradise of the universal synarchy. It would not be very expensive. The price to pay, 250 to 3,000 men, would be enough to fabricate the sufficient ashes. The rabbis, and Japanese priests, of the wide fraternity arranged the pact, and in this manner was how on August 6, 1945, and August 9 of 1945, fell the atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Ashes of thousands of men, salt of earth and heaven, water of heaven and earth, human lie, that cleans the sin of man against Jehovah God, and against the law of God. Who orders the mini-fire holocaust of the Japanese, is the Hebrew President of the United States, Harry Solomon Truman, whose real surname is Ship. Mason of Grade 33, counts with the hidden advice of the great Snaphatarine and Jews, and Masons of the size of Dean Chfezin, of the General Marshal, Sitter, Rosenman, etc., who are openly supported by the Jewish band of Baruch, Eldon Roosevelt, Herbert Lehman, Pavel Harriman, Paul Hoffman, Walter Lippmann, etc. Because the real synarchic work of the United States in the Second War was not developed by Truman, who acceded to the power just on April 12 of 1945, after the sudden death of the Jew Roosevelt. He was the authentic producer of the Judaic plans. Descendant of Klezmer Tenzin Rosenwelt, full-blooded Hebrew, who immigrated to New York in 1644, Franklin Delano Roosevelt registered double Jewish paternity, as his father, James Roosevelt, and his mother, Sarah Delano, belonged to the chosen people. And also his wife, Eleanor, daughter of the Jews, Elliot, and Anna Hall. The Jewish mafia that unleashed the crisis of 1929, that catapulted him to the power. Some of the collaborators of the period were Jews of extreme dangerousness and evil without name, as Bernard Baruch, Herbert Lehman, Averell Harriman, Sol Bloom, Samuel Rosenman, Henry Morgenthau, Oscar Strauss, Marion Davies, Truman, etc. All of exceptional power in the White House. Once accomplished the sacrifice, cleaned the Japanese sin, with human bleach, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, would come the reward which is at sight. The reconstruction plan of the Jew Marshal, the end of the Japanese militarism, the integration of the international synarchic system, the barter of the samurais for the yens, the elevation of their life standard, and finally, the discovery of the real face of Japan, as the Shiva Guru of Shinin, anticipated wisely. Of course, these charges against Japan can't be attenuated by the certain fact that during the war, many Japanese fought with peerless heroism, as, for example, the kamikazes. Things must be called by their name, and recognize the exceptions to the rules. As in the loyal Germany, existed uncountable traitors, in the traitor Japan, many brave loyal warriors stood out, honorably,